Good afternoon, everybody. I am excited to welcome you to the High Point Historical Society's March Educational Program. My name is Julie Rayner, and I welcome you all on behalf of the Society and the High Point Museum. High Point Historical Society, if you didn't know, collects, preserves, and showcases the history of Greater High Point to foster a shared appreciation of our community reflected in the stories, events, and traditions of the past. We extend our invitation for you to join the organization. I have some information at the back table, so you can see me afterwards if you would like. Today, we are so excited to welcome you to our program about High Point's Soapbox Derbies. We're lucky to have our two panelists here today, Harrison Bud Lyon, who was the first African-American boy to win in High Point in 1954. So say hi to Bud here.
Hey. How you doing?
We also have Bill Blair, who competed in the very first High Point Derby in 1951. So, and we did have a third panelist scheduled for today, but unfortunately she's unable to be here due to illness. And her name is Gail Curtis Peden, and she was one of the first girls to race and the first to win the High Point. And it happened to be the last Derby in 1972. But the museum staff is going to contact her and get a recorded interview with her that they will have on the museum's YouTube channel, which they also share to their Facebook page. So keep an eye out for that over the next week or so. Okay, so I'm going to be real informal, but I have some questions that I'm going to ask each of these gentlemen. And then we will open it up for your questions afterwards. So please join me again in welcoming Bud and Bill. Okay, Bud, you're first, all right? Okay. How did you get connected with the High Point Derby coming from Durham?
This guy named Cadoza McCullough, he knew about the races all over the town, and we called to Greensburg, and then, first of all, they stopped the race in Durham, North Carolina in 1953. And I built my race in 54. So we called to Greensburg, and they didn't have a soapbox derby race there. So he said, well, High Point had one when he called in. So I came to High Point and I competed in High Point.
Okay. Bill, how did you hear about the first car race, and how did you get involved with it?
Well, my brother-in-law works at WMFR radio station, High Point, and he was the mouth of the South. And so he found out about it, I guess from Gary Davis, who also worked there. And I think Gary maybe helped organize the Soapbox Derby here in High Point in 1951. And of course, my daddy being a racer, and I grew up in a family of racing. And he told me about it, Frank come to the house and said they're going to have a soapbox derby race. I really did not know what soapbox derby was at that point in time. And we had to go to the Chevrolet dealer to get a rule book, I believe it was, and you went to Shell Oil to get the oil for the wheels, and my sponsor was Elmer Kearns Esso. I think it cost $30 to sponsor one, and of course you put their name on the side of your car, and that's how I found out about that story.
Great. Bud,
Yes.
what do you remember about the High Point Derby?
I remember that it turned out to be very nice, and the people was nice, and I came to win the race, and I did.
You were determined, you were all set to race, and Greensboro didn't have one, so you came here.
No,
instead.
Greensboro didn't have a race that year.
Right, so you came to High Point
So
instead.
we called High Point, and they said they had a race that year. And so we all came up to High Point.
Well, that's great.
That's what it was.
Bill, can you tell us about what you remember building your car?
Well, I'd never seen a soapbox derby. I had a radio flower wagon and we went up down the hill with it, and some of my neighbors did too, and that's all I knew about it. But there was a guy in High Point, Richard Mason. He had won over in Weston, I believe it was, and I knew him and looked at his car. Of course, when I built mine, I knew nothing about it. You get that little book there, a few pages in it, gives you some diagrams and told you that your parents, so you could get advice, but you couldn't get somebody to build your car for you. So my first car was very, very crude, and I got my mother's tablecloth, which was a wax tablecloth, and that's how I covered the car, so you can imagine. And I even lettered it myself, and then my daddy painted over that with some silver paint, and got Ross Huggin, his sign painter, come out and lettered. It's very crude, and I run decent. I don't remember how I finished. I know Richard won it. He also won in Weston in '51, and I guess he went to Akron. But it was, like I said, it was crude. Nothing about it, just pictures and talking to people. That's my first one.
Well, Bud, what about building your car? Do you have memories of that process?
Well, I got a 2x4, 4x4, and plywood. We started from there. And after we built the racer, I sanded the racer down myself. And I used to grease the wheels, put them on the table, and lubricate the wheels, take a rag, turn them. And put them on a race car, and that was it.
Where did you get your wheels? Where did you get your wheels from?
They ordered wheels, ordered them from the store.
Were they expensive?
Say what?
Were they expensive, the wheels?
I can't remember that now.
If I may, I got mine from the Chevrolet dealer. I think Chevrolet was the sponsor of Soapbox Derby at that point.
Yes, Chevrolet was.
And they was in a long box, probably about 36 inches long by 12, about 8 or 10. And as he said, we'd polish up the bearings. I used Julian's Rouge and made a mixture to do that. But depending on how much time you wanted to spend spinning the wheels day and night, I did a lot of that. But I got a lot of advice from Richard Mason, and his friend of mine, and his car, made mine look very shameful, I hate to crawl down the end. But it was, so much fun. It wasn't all about the racer, we wanted to win naturally, but the people there, High Point at that time had one high school. We knew each other basically, and it was just one big party in a way, very friendly, met people, and as I remember, there was a big crowd the first 2 years I was involved, 51, 52. I mean, just both sides of the street was lined up, and it was on Centennial, it was a very steep street, they built a ramp, and what stopped you, you went up the other hill, and they caught you. And then they had pickup trucks there to carry you back to the start line. And I think second year they dropped mine off, it rolled off the truck. We had a real line. But had so much fun, and it's all we talked about, and so much fun.
Sounds like it.
Did those wheels have ball bearings?
I think they had
Yes,
little
they
roll
did.
ball bearings in it,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, when you went to Akron, I believe that they took them wheels off and they furnished your wheels.
Oh, really?
And I think that they was maybe, I don't think everybody was in agreement with them doing that, spend that much time on your wheels, but I guess they got to be where they start trimming the tread on. There was no tread, but just like a ball tire, but it was about yay wide, and they was taking them, narrowing them up a little bit, so that there's friction. So So, I don't know why they decided to do that in Akron. You may know, you pretty much know what happened back in the days, but, why did they do that?
Because there was so much, secrets about doing wheels, you could make them extremely fast. You could even treat the tread with different chemicals to make the tire fast, or make the wheel faster, plus what you guys did. So I think Akron made a decision to run out of a wheel bank. So when you took your car there, you draw for a wheel set. And that kinda equalized the races up a little bit.
When I asked him up in Akron, I said, why did you change my wheel? The guy told me because there was a defect on the wheel. And all this was said after we had the trial day.
Uh-huh,
Trial day, I had the fastest time up there.
yeah,
And so the day of the race, my wheel was changed.
yeah. But I have a feeling that was to equalize the race by giving you a new set of wheels.
Well, Bud, what can you tell us, you've talked a little bit about Akron, what else could you tell us about your experience going there? I'm sure that was a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Oh, well, it was a very good experience. The boys ran to 8, and from Eden, they had a show, a teleshow that night, but a lot of the entertainers came out, and we enjoyed that. And then we went back to our place where we slept at after the show and everything. And some of the boys, we went to Cincinnati and came back. We had a good experience up there in Akron that time.
How old were you then when you were in Akron?
13?
13?
13. Yeah. 13 years old.
I bet that was a big deal.
Huh?
I bet that was a big deal going from Durham up there.
Oh, yeah. Young man back then.
But I have a question about being a 13-year-old boy going down the track on the race day. How many heats did you run in the All-American?
How many heats?
Yeah. Did you win a heat at the All-American?
Yeah. I placed 4th in Akron, the national.
What?
I placed 4th.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you won at least 4 heats.
Yeah.
So you had to run down the track 5 times.
Yep.
And each time you were going on the track, you had 50,000 people in the audience, in the stands around you, screaming out
Screaming and
loud.
hollering both sides.
Could you hear that when you were going down the track?
You don't hear nothing when you're in the race.
I know, I used to race, I know how it feels, because you're down low, but
That's
still,
right.
you got 50,000 people screaming at you.
Yep.
That's gotta feel like something. All I know is that what I've been told, because I've never been to Akron during a race, like when it was 50,000, 70,000 sometimes people in the audience, that it was so loud that the announcer saying, "They're getting there," you couldn't hear them. All you heard was 50,000 people roaring.
Yeah,
And I want to know, sir, what you heard when you were going on the track. That must have had an impact on you.
I mean, it was great, but mostly it was concentrating on winning that race.
Yeah.
On win each time you go down. I was concentrating on winning. But when the race was over, then you could hear the people hollering and screaming and all this. And but when the race started, I mean, the place was loud.
That year, what was the best lane? That year in Akron, which was the best lane? Or what was the bad lane?
The bad
1,
lane?
2, yeah, 1, 2, or 3. Was there a bad lane?
Well, I couldn't pay too much attention to that because you're young and inexperienced.
Yeah.
And the thing about it, you want to try to win when you go down that lane. If you're in the first, second, or third lane, so that lane didn't make no difference to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it was.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
What did you do within the car as a driver to enhance your speed or make it faster?
It's not what you can do to make it fast. The only thing you can do was with your wheels, lubricate them, and take a rag and spin them over many times you want to help lubricate the bearings in the wheel, make it much more loose so to go faster. When the racer come down the slant, you're on your own. You can't make it go faster or slower.
You just steer it, right?
Yes, that's steer it straight down the hill. It has its own speed.
One thing that, I would add to that, what you're concentrating on, you said winning. But early on, what I found out, now, you know, 51 was the first race, and Richard Mason on the go-to guy had, you know, he'd been at the Akron. But the important thing, and he told me this, and it's true, is the alignment of your axles, and when you go down the hill, keep it straight, don't swerve from one side to the other. Every time you do, you scrub off speed, so you want to get it headed in the right direction when you come down the ramp, and it's always what they had early days, when you come off that ramp and hit Centennial Avenue, it bumps, you know, and your head hit the hood of the car, we'll call that. So you had to watch your nose and all, but you had to keep that car going straight as possible as you could, and that's what I concentrated on. And of course, I think that first year here, I finished third, fourth, something like that. I was in competition to the very last, and I don't know how I finished. It might be in the newspaper, but anyway, that's what I concentrated on, keeping it going straight.
Well, each year that I raced in, the year I raced in, didn't have no bump, nothing like that. That's a straight slant.
Well, I think Centennial they thought was too fast,
Oh.
because some boys over there had spun out, went out through the crowd and got the attention of a lot of people, no doubt. But they went to Northern High Point, about one block east or west of Main, and that had no speed there, and I guess you'd be right there, you know, but you just run too fast over Centennial. I think we run 35, 40 miles an hour.
Yep.
And the way they knew that, they had a policeman on a three-wheeler, and he would fall in behind us and clocks going down the hill.
I understand that they did have a ramp back, high ramp to come down there.
That's right.
But we just got on the straight slant and go down the ramp there.
Yeah, you could hear Paul, that ramp made a special noise
Yeah.
as it rolled down that ramp, and then you hit the streets, you know, and that straight Centennial was not very smooth, really.
Right. Well, that what, they had eliminated the ramp when I ran. When they had a ramp in the race. It all was a straight slant down the hill.
You guys had been to Winston, over Bone Gray Stadium, didn't they have a big ramp over there?
Yes, they did.
How was that constructed?
It was about as high as this ceiling in the back, and it was 60 foot long. And, so it had a pretty good transition from the ramp to the flat track at Bowman Gray Stadium, like that. I don't think the speeds were as near as fast as running on city streets, but let's say probably 20 to 25 mile an hour range. And, I raced over there in, 54 to 58.
Well, what about over there at that Hobby Park, when they built that special track for it, how fast did they go there?
They can run 35 miles an hour. Can I mention something about, I'm from Winston-Salem, okay, and that's where I raced and got involved in Derby. Along with my son raced there, and my grandson has raced there. But they built a track back in the late 80s in Forsyth County. It's located on West Clemensville Road in the Hobby Park there. It's a dedicated track with guardrails, and it's been repaved here over the last year. There's going to be a race there in that Hobby Park April 28th to 29th, which is the last weekend in April. And they've invited cars from all over the country to come there and race. And Derby now has 3 divisions: stock, super stock, and masters. If you get a chance to come over, we would love to see some of you guys to come over and get updated in soapbox derby racing, because it's truly through the years has progressed or made transitions. Of course, you know that girls now race, and matter of fact, girls are very good drivers. They pay attention to what they're doing. And so when he told you about concentrating and driving, that's a big part of winning. You can only make the car so fast, but it's up to the driver, sometimes even to drive the track. You know, roads are not necessarily flat, they have curvature in them. So as you start, you can drift the car over to the one side or the other to gain momentum right off the bat. So if you get a chance, come over and watch the race that day. I think y'all would enjoy that. Sorry I took so much time.
Thanks for that, that's great, that's great. Bill, could you talk about what you brought here with you today? Your hat, your helmet, and your picture here.
Well, I brought my wife. I wouldn't leave her, but, this is a picture, I think in 1951 or 2, I believe it's 52, but all these guys you see here in this picture, you're welcome to come up later and look at it, but they're my friends from the high school. All of us was in high school basically, and one of them in that picture, Sam Snyder, his wife is ill. He's gonna come today. He raced a couple of years.
He's right here. He just came in.
There's Sam. So anyway,
You didn't want to admit it out running.
Anyway, I brought my helmet. This is a 52 helmet, I believe. Had all these years. And I don't remember if we even had a helmet 51. I just don't remember that. It seems like I kept it, but would you know?
Probably very similar. I would think that insurance purposes require them to wear some sort of head protection. So I've only got a 54 through 58 helmet, so I'm not sure.
I know it was very impromptu that first year, and it's stayed together, no doubt. And it was very well run, though. Very well run. I guess they had the JCs to help them and had people lined up to pick up trucks to carry racing back up the hill. And I don't know how they decided to line this up, but anyway, it was very well run.
Is there a ribbon on that helmet?
Yes, what does it say, Sheila?
It's a heat race.
Heat race, must have won a heat race now.
Well, thank you.
Did they give you a ribbon for every heat race you won?
Yeah.
Did they? Okay.
You remember, Sam?
Hmm?
Do you remember? Did they give him?
I finished third in the whole deal, so I don't know.
I know, Bud, you've talked a lot about the good conversation here is great. Could you both talk about sort of the logistics of the races in those years, kind of how they were run, and you've talked a little bit about that so far. Bill, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
And the run,
Bill, didn't they just give us the wheels and the axles and you had to build all the rest of it?
Well, yeah, as we discussed earlier, you went Chevrolet, they've got your axles and red rim tires, and they all come in a box. And then you went to Shell service station to get the oil, but it was, emphasis was that you built it yourself. You didn't get somebody to build it for you. And mine looked really like I built it. You see some stuff I made there over the years. My second was much better. And I'll get back to the logistics, but I want to say something about the second car. The 51, we didn't know what to expect, did you? And you had a book, that's all you had to go by, and if it hadn't been for Richard Mason, we'd have been in trouble. He really helped us. I don't know if Richard's still living or not, but he was tremendous help for the first couple of years around High Point. But as progress, as you learn, the soapbox derby, to me, the design of it changed. They began to lay down in the cars, and then it began to be, the first ones you saw, your full face and helmet, flapping in the breeze. And then later on, you can barely see the top of the head, you might see the eyes. So they begin to get into the aero, like all racers, it's aero package. But soapbox derbies made that transition at some point in time. I guess it started in the 50s, from what I see with the derbies out here in the pictures. But I guess logistics, as I remember, I talked to a lot of people. I had to get me some wood. I went to Hitchcock Lumber Company and bought some wood to build my floor. One for the, I guess I used 2 before, and a hinge for the brake, and I got a cable and 2 turnbuckles, made a pedal, and I cut down, they gave me a tire, and I took a hacksaw and cut a section out of it for my brake pad, and I guess I nailed it on. And, it's very crude. I don't think we said anything but the floor said, you know, you had no springs, it was a rough ride, like riding a Bronco, you know. Well, then you get it to the track, they inspect it, and one like, they didn't have to ask me, did I get somebody to help me build mine, you can look at it. You wouldn't, a good match had a good fire line, but, anyway,
Some of them were that they had somebody build it.
yeah, and it wasn't and I guess that they did run into trouble from time to time with cars just so far out that the individual being 13, 14 years old could not have built that car. They knew that. And, they had to get very strict with the rules later on, but to begin with, over here in High Point, everybody's real nice and cordial and didn't have arguments or anything, but you could look at some cars that are just too nice for the individuals who have built it, that showed up they're 13 years old to do that. But, I think that the JC's helped. They had, people pick up trucks there to, transport your car from the shutdown area past the finish line to carry back up the hill. And that'd be a back street that they carried your car back up generally. And, if you had any questions, you was all there together, and all you had to do is help me here a minute. Be a lot of people fall right there and hit you, didn't the JCs or the civic clubs there helping, they were, you know, in and out of the crowd, talking to the race car, you okay, do you need, I need some water. And of course, Cheryl and Chevrolet were very supportive. And being 13, 14 years old, we were still paying attention to the girls, so I can't tell you everything that's going on. But anyway, I guess later on, as I witnessed in all forms of racing, things began to get more technical and technical and technical, and we got to where we're at today, and these cars are no kin to what we used to race.
Who was your sponsor?
Elmer Kern, he had a ASO service station up on Main Street in Lexington. Then the second year, the Big Bear Supermarket, George Heston's family, they were sponsoring my daddy in the strictly stock racing that he was running Grand National. And they sponsored me in Soapbox Derby. And I had a decent car that year. What I did then, you know, I learned a lesson the first year, so I drew mine out on a big old piece of cardboard. Furniture manufacturer, whenever I got this big cardboard that they box up their furniture to ship. And I drew it out and with a yardstick. And remember the first year I used my mother's tablecloth to cover my car. And of course I wasn't ashamed of it, I was proud of it. It rolled, so what can I say? But it's fairly fast. But the second car I built, it was much streamlined and lower. And I began to learn to lean over and do things that others had previously learned. So it was a much better car, and I had all, I carried a Hitchcock, and I didn't have a saw, and I had to go over there to saw it out for me. And I put the pieces in the pickup truck, on the pickup truck, and brought it home, and I put it together. And he suggested I use screws, not all nailed, that plywood called it a splinter. But still, it liked a lot to be desired. It was a much better car, and I thought it ran better.
Who sponsored you down in Durham?
Service Spring Company of Durham, North Carolina, sponsored me.
Service station?
Service Spring Company. Yeah.
Bud, do you know Sam Gupton?
Sam who?
Gupton, he's a winner out of Durham, North Carolina, who won the first, North Carolina won that first championship up in Akron, was a young man named Sam Gupton. Wasn't it 68?
70.
70?
I heard him, but I didn't know him personally.
Yeah.
I heard of him.
Cause hearing your comment about building a car,
Yeah.
Sam had a fiberglass shell car, and it was a laydown racer, very sleek and aerodynamic.
Beautiful car.
Beautiful car.
Yeah.
So when he got there, they questioned him pretty heavily on the construction of his car. He offered to the Akron people that he would build them a replica car right there then. He says, I built this car. I guess Sam was probably 14, maybe 15, I don't know. But
It happens from time to time. The officials will question the builder because the car is too sophisticated for a young individual to have constructed it. It
Yeah.
happened in '39.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, that put Durham on the map.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the only North Carolina winner I can think of.
And now it's in Akron, Ohio, at the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
still there.
Did they assign your numbers, or did you get to
Say
choose
what?
your, did they assign the number you put on your car, or did you get to choose it?
You get to do it yourself.
No, you got to pick your own number. Oh,
I picked number 2 because that was my daddy's modified number 2. So you could pick it yourself as somebody before you had wanted that number.
what class were you both riding in? A or B?
Well, in 51, 52, I don't think they had different classes.
Oh, didn't they have different classes back then? No? Okay.
Didn't have any when I was running either.
Yeah, okay.
A lot more fun, a lot more simple. Now, let me ask you a question. Obviously, like in history, people try to preserve our history and our heritage, but apparently there's a group of people in this country that love old soapbox derby racing that you're a member of, if there is an association, but you seem to be very well versed in the history of soapbox derby racing.
I'm just beginning.
You just begin.
Bob's been at it for a lot longer than me.
Okay. Is it a lot of fun?
Hmm?
Is it a lot of fun to go back and study?
The best part is the people that we all get to meet. Because we were all kids once. You know, we just hadn't met yet. Now we're meeting at our age.
Well, very fortunately,
Yeah.
you started at the right time. You didn't wait too late because, like in stock car racing, the people who were the founders of stock car racing are all dead. So you only can find out by reading a book or maybe somebody that was there early on. But it's still young enough for sports soapbox derby is that all these people are still living. You're 82 and I'm 84.
Yeah.
So just think if you started another 10 years down the road, you might be in trouble.
Mhm.
Bill is being very modest. He does 3D renderings of old cars throughout the year, and I think you've actually built a couple of them, hadn't you, recently? Some replicas?
The one that's on display right now, that's my most recent model. It's in, yeah, it's
Okay.
model 77.
All right. And you keep a registry.
Did you restore it?
No, I didn't do the restoration. In fact, I'd like to know who did restore that car. Class
Edith.
car.
Edith should
Yeah,
know.
Todd Jorgensen, he's a conservator, he's done some other conservative work for some other artifacts.
It's not
and he's
easy.
the one that did it, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
he is not a soapbox derby
No,
person. So he took something that he's not familiar with,
yeah,
cleaned it up. I saw it before when it was just covered in dust.
yeah,
Just
cause it had been in the basement for,
7 years.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I made sure I mentioned
Yeah.
that in my posting online. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
Do you have a website, Bill?
no, not yet. I'm going to do that soon. It's also going to be posted all on Wikipedia. I'm going to be doing a massive article on. My job is to historically preserve the legacy of Derby while we're all still around kicking to tell our stories. Because one day we'll all be gone, and the cars will still be here. So right now I've been doing a database. I've been identifying every extant soapbox derby car from 1998, which is the youngest car. That's 25 years vintage, to 1933, the first year of Derby. I've been identifying every car that's right now sitting in a museum on the planet. Japan has cars, Germany has cars, America has cars. We're right now in the epicenter of museums and our historical societies that have cars on display. And I'm trying to get all that information now and then communicate with all the societies and museums to say, hi, you're on our registry now, so that everyone knows where to find it. So eventually, if someone wants to find a car, particularly if they've lost a car, because some young lads and ladies have lost their cars over the years. If I do the database, they might be able to find it, because they go errant. Some have been stolen, some have been lost forever. So,
Well, I want to tell the people that are here that may not know. Now, like I'm a member of the acquisition committee of this museum. 2 years ago, we chose the soapbox derby car that we have in the room there. And then right before Christmas, we send letters out asking for donations to help restore that car. And that's how we pay for what's done to it. But we were holding our breath. I mean, Edith made me remember, because when they
But
got
you did very
into
well.
it.
That did very well, that fundraiser, you guys made
Yeah.
good money,
Yeah,
Yep.
a lot, from what I saw.
yeah, and, it was sort of a pet project of a friend of ours that died not long ago of cancer, Bill Phillips.
And Clyde just died last year.
Yes, we were very
He
fortunate.
donated the car to you.
Yes, and we were very fortunate to interview him because he passed away
I saw
shortly
the, I
after.
saw the
So
tape,
we
yeah.
were very lucky that we were able to talk with him when we did, so.
When you won the race, did you get a trophy, a ribbon? Did they give you cash to help you get to the next race, or how was that done?
I got a trophy, certificate, and free round trip to Akron, Ohio.
But they never gave you any money to help you along? Okay.
No.
Didn't
No
know.
bicycle.
Did you have to
They
pay
give you
for, did
scholarships
you
to
have to pay for
college.
your stay
Yeah.
in Akron, or did somebody
No.
else pay it?
They paid for it.
Oh, they did?
They did.
Did y'all stay at the Y camp when y'all were there?
Yeah. They did.
Okay.
And plus, it was a weight thing for the person and the race car.
Yeah.
They had a weight class. You couldn't go over there weight neither. The year that I raced, had a weight class.
Was that a weight class? You mean the actual weight of the?
With the racer and yourself.
Yeah.
I forgot the amount.
250 pounds.
Yeah, it was always, when I raced, it was the same, 250 pounds.
How much?
Car and driver together.
250.
Yeah.
250.
That was, yes,
Yeah.
in fact, it's still a rule today, I think, too.
It is, yeah.
Or for Superstock, I think it's 250, isn't it?
Well, I think it's 255 for Masters,
Yeah.
250 for Super Stock, and the stock cars are
It's a little
smaller
later.
kids,
Yeah,
so it's 220.
220.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because if you get an 8-year-old who's eligible to race now, and you can have a max weight of 250, well, a car would weigh so daggone much, it's hard to load in a truck.
Yeah.
And so that's why they made a lower weight limit for the smaller kids. But 250 is a
250
popular
was right.
number for many, many years.
Yeah, 250.
So you had to be careful what you ate, right?
That morning.
And what you build your race out of too.
Yeah.
You can go over that limit.
But you only raced 1 year. Is
Yeah.
that right? Yeah. And then once you won, you were limited. You couldn't race
I
again.
couldn't race again.
So how did you feel about that? Not being able to race again?
Well, by me winning the first time, I felt good.
Yeah, of course.
So I don't worry about being in a race no more.
I gotta ask, where is your car? Is your car still around?
Well, they sent my car to a service printing company in Durham, North Carolina.
Mhm.
And I left Durham after I graduated from school and stuff, and went north, stayed up north about 50-some years. And during the time I was up north, I came back. They told me that Service Printing Company had burnt down, had 2 bad fires in it.
Huh.
So my race was burned up in the fire.
That's how I lost my car.
And
Fire.
Service Printing Company went out of business
Huh.
during the time I was away from Durham, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill, what about your car? What happened to it? Or
The
the
first one,
cars?
I tore it up, we had a farm and, it's rather hilly in some parts of it, we made us a course.
Yeah.
And we'd like to have curves in it, so we slide sideways like the real race cars did, you know. And I told it when I came
You're right,
back.
you just wrecked it.
And then the second one, I kept it for years and years and years, and I moved to Alabama. The company I worked for transferred me down there. And I came back home, my daddy, and downsized, giving it away, and then I bought a house in the basement.
That's too bad. Really nice to see them.
Maybe I've got pictures of that, so you could resurrect it for me.
Yeah,
I
that's
like
why I'm
it.
here. Research.
I understand why
It's a
Bill asked
wonder
you.
Bill don't have it, cause he keeps stuff like that.
The reason Bill asked you a question about once you won the race, you couldn't race anymore, is now Akron supports a rally race division, which once you've won your All-American, you can enter this rally race program and go from city to city and accumulate points. And if you get enough points, you're invited to Akron to race in the rally race divisions. So you've got your local champions who race in all three divisions, and you've got your rally champions who race in all three divisions. So they'll have about 600 cars up there now currently at Akron. Their races run in August, and so there's there's also
It's a long week.
yeah, and there's also a new division they call Legacy Division, which are for the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds who can go back to the old design race cars and build them more by hand.
But they don't, they still go with the high-tech NASA looking cars.
Yeah.
They're too slick.
Yeah. Just as you say, the technology in anything we do nowadays have changed over the years, and so it is with Soapbox Derby or Pinewood Derby race cars. If anybody's ever raced a Pinewood Derby.
I've seen Applewood Derby, Pinewood Derby, there's Orange Crate Derby, there's all these different names for them.
Well, if you couldn't weigh over 250 when the race started, was there a minimum race amount you could pounds you could weigh? I mean, did you be really light, or did they make you weigh a certain?
I don't recall the minimum, that
There was no
maximum, Jim's what they focused on.
I think kids were encouraged to have the maximum weight because more weight means faster cars up a hill. Lightweight cars didn't go fast. Fast, heavy cars always do. I learned that when I was a young man racing. So, because I raced for 3 years, and like Bob said, we moved like a rally family. We wouldn't just run in a local, we raced in town to town to town. It was always the same families of Derby families going with us, so we all knew each other. And the reason rallies was more fun was because kids can run 4, 5, 6 races, and if they won in each race, they might run 4 or 5 times. They get to go down hills 20 times in a summer, maybe even more. It's fun.
Well, obviously, it's called Soapbox Derby. I'm guessing in 33 that they were building my soapboxes.
Yeah.
And I wonder what they look like. Soapbox with wheels on it, yes.
You can find pictures of those cars online.
Some of the cars the first year they ran, the 33 race was in Dayton. And Dayton ran in 34. That was the first official Soapbox Derby in 1934. And the third place car was a complete monocoque car. It had a windscreen, it was completely enclosed. It looked like something built in from NASA. It was really high tech.
Yeah.
In 1934. 1934.
34.
Yeah, and by the way, in 33 race, the second place winner was a young lady. She tucked her hair under her helmet to disguise herself like a boy, and then when she came in second, off comes the helmet, out comes the hair. Ooh, it's a girl. Because it was just for boys. It was not allowed for girls, and she snuck in. Ladies, a little bit of data, a little bit of information.
Yeah, you gotta watch them girls.
Well, I think that was the idea. At 13 years old, all we wanted to do was, hey, Bill, hey, bud, watch girls.
That's right.
How long did they have the races here in High Point? From what years, do you know?
Does anybody know that? How
What
long
I
they raced?
understand is that 1972 was the last race, so the race that Gail won was the last
The
race.
college has got a hill.
That's when everybody started coming to Winston-Salem to race.
Yeah.
Greensboro had a race up until in about 78, 79, 80 somewhere. Then they came to Winston-Salem to race. The Durham people went to Charlotte. Charlotte had their own dedicated racetrack.
Yeah, beautiful track in Charlotte.
Yeah, some development company bought that property and tore everything down. But we used to go to Charlotte, and Charlotte was a replica of Akron track, as close as they could get it.
They had a bridge at the bottom.
Yeah.
Over the finish line, the same as Akron did.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, the last, I'm trying to think, the race out in the Asheville area, what's the name of that town, Marion? There's only one race city an All-American right now in North Carolina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and as soon as I think of the city, I'll let it, it's down up close to Hickory, down in that direction. But, Huntersville, North Carolina, oddly enough, was the last one before that. And Joe Gibbs's race shop set in a shopping center area, where plants and things are all. And they ran on the city street in Huntersville up until about 4 or 5 years ago. So right now, North Carolina really only has the one All-American race city. But now that Winston-Salem has redone their track, I need to talk to a man called Steve Hayes there and see if we can get the All-American
I
program
didn't see it, Bob.
restarted there. Because I'm sure there's enough notoriety if we can get it going for the whole Triad area, for Winston-Salem, Greensboro, High Point, and that, to have at least one center where we can have a race and send our winner to represent this area in Akron. That would be nice to do again.
Do they still have soap and feather racing now?
Where at?
Anywhere around there?
That little town in North Carolina that I can't think of the name of, I'm sorry, I'm a senior citizen now, and they didn't want to come, but they have a race every May. Give me a moment and I'll think of the town. And right now, you have to race, if you race All-American, in the city closest to your residence, just like it was in the 50s. You had to race in High Point if you lived here, or you had to race in those different things. But I'll forget.
You mentioned Huntersville, which is outside of Winston-Salem, right?
Yes, well, it's outside of Charlotte, it's closer. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was trying to think where, I know where you're talking about. But is there a hill there that you can race down?
No, they ran on the city street and ran off ramps, just
Off a
like the
ramp.
old days.
Off a ramp.
They had a pretty going program there in Huntersville at one time. And they did what they called, what are those cars, the Derby Club keeps cars? And so that instead of the people having to build a car, they would tear it apart since it was a kit. And they would run clinics and people would come in to the clinic and put the car back together. And that they could race that car for the one race, instead of having to go out and purchase the materials, If you buy a kit now, a stock car kit is $550. And,
Yeah, they're up there.
yeah, and then if you buy a set of wheels, I think that's $100 for the wheels.
Forget that, the paint jobs alone of these new cars gotta be going into the thousands. The paint jobs are incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know where they get these paint jobs, but wow. Like, you guys talk about doing it by hand with brush, doing it, old school. This is how I did my car.
Well, listen to the conversation that you had, what it was, and when it was, and what it is now. The thing I came away with was a lot of friendship, new friends, and just an enjoyable part of my time of growing up. I think it added to my, let's say, projection in life, to meet people, be able to talk to people, and just a big program for youths. And today, they have grants of all kinds to subsidize this, subsidize that, but the soapbox derby, here we are this many years later, still talking about it, still got a car out here, it's still of interest. But that was one program that they brought it back today, and there's two of you that know enough about it to help get something off the ground, but go to you, people in the city, and ask them about how would you ever get this started again in a big way. I wouldn't want to get the government in it, but it would help our youth if they could once again realize what the experience was that we had when we did. It was tremendous, wasn't it?
It was.
And money can't buy that.
No, it can't.
I haven't heard Gary Davis' name mentioned. Anybody know who that is?
Yes.
He was a big promoter, soapbox derby, when we ran.
Did you say Irvin Davis? Irvin Davis?
Gary Davis.
Oh, Gary Davis, he was a radio station guy. He's the guy that organized it.
Yeah.
He's a
Just
long
takes
time.
one, yeah. Just takes one person who just has the power to, or the passion to push it.
He did.
Back in the day when he was racing, Chevrolet, division of General Motors was pumping all this money into Derby racing. That's why the wheels were free, the axles,
Yeah,
the
from
steering wheel
Chevrolet,
and all that
that's
stuff.
where
All
we
you
got
had to do is buy the wood
Yeah.
and build yourself a car. And the local JCs, just about in every city, furnished the manpower to run these races. And the local newspapers kinda was into it, like the Winston-Salem Journal, is it the High Point Enterprise?
Yeah.
Charlotte Observer, backed this and gave it notoriety by putting pictures in the paper. And I've noticed you've got some in your museum, you've got some, old Derby pictures. But there was, there was not soccer, there was not Little League Baseball as much then, and other sports for kids to participate in. And so being in Derby racing is a competitive thing against other activities in the thing, but we just need to find a core of individuals to get it restarted. And we've got a good race facility not far from here. It would be about 30 miles from here. There's a dedicated Derby track. What I could do is talk to some of your museum people, yourselves, and maybe we could even conduct a further meeting here sometimes and see if people in this area are interested in getting their own race together. And we could even actually transport those cars to a Derby track to race.
Wouldn't the JCs be a good group to get involved? Or would they?
Yeah, if you know somebody there, probably.
Even if you gotta know somebody.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but in today's Derby racing, do they still have rules where the people running the, gonna race the car, do they have to make it, or are they able to get professionals to help them? You're saying the cars have evolved, I know they've evolved, but is it still to where the kids have to do the cars themselves?
Supposedly it is, yes
Supposedly.
ma'am, but you can have, mom or dad help you with the car. I'm telling you, the kits are so simple, you and your husband can put this car together almost in a weekend.
In a weekend.
In a weekend, they're that simple to build.
So
Now,
it comes with a body and
us a
everything
long
now?
time.
Yeah, it comes with the body, the
It's
full
like buying a
board.
model kit, except it's, it's.
Oh, well,
And
that's-
it is a set of instructions, and you got all the nuts, bolts, and screws, and
Beautiful look around.
everything, and just put it together, follow the instructions.
What's the price?
$5.50 for the stock,
I
top
think,
secret stock.
I think the Scotty's about 800, 750,
Is it that much now?
maybe more, I don't know.
Yeah, it's just like everything else recently, it's gone up, and of course, that's
Man, I don't
including
think we
shipping.
spent over $25 on.
Well, you had $30, that's what your sponsorship
Back in
was, $30
19
bucks, that's how much you could spend, you know.
$30?
$13?
$30.
Well, that's what you got, you know, Al Kerr's giving us a check for $30.
I was sponsored by Mingle Box Company in Winston-Salem one year, and they built wooden boxes, so when I built my car, I just went up there and got scrap wood from them to build a car out of.
We had to go buy it, like you said, from the lumber company, took the sixes, put them together.
The ideal sponsor was Hitchcock Lumber.
That's nice when you've got that situation.
But when you went to Akron, they obviously took your car away from you when you won here, and then they painted your car, didn't they?
Say what now?
They repainted your car when you went to Akron?
No,
They
they
didn't
didn't
repaint
repaint.
your car?
No, they didn't repaint it.
Oh, really? So the sponsor that was painted on the side of your car when you won the High Point race,
Same one I went
it
to
was
the
on the
next.
still painted on the car
Yeah.
when you went to Akron?
Yeah, same, it's
Huh. I'm surprised.
That's why you
Yeah.
ask that question.
But, hmm?
only thing they did in Akron is change my wheels.
Change the wheels, yeah. They put on wheels that were never spun,
Right,
so they were brand new, so they weren't broken in.
it was slower,
Yeah, yeah. I think that's why they were doing it to slow all the cars down,
yeah,
because the cars were getting up there in speed. And
Yeah.
that's why they keep shortening the track.
yeah.
Started off at almost 1,000 foot in Akron, and now it's down to 949?
53, 953.
953, is that what it is now?
Yeah.
Bob?
with the rules, you know, they wanted it to be equal, everybody have a fair chance. And people had learned or had been told by others who had the knowledge to go to work on the wheels and to begin to do stuff to the compound of the rubber. You could buy chemicals that would either make it softer or harder. Of course, if it's harder rubber, you had less rolling resistance. And if you narrowed up the width of the patch of the tire on the surface, it was less friction, so it rolled freer. And so what Acton was trying to do was take all that knowledge away and make everybody equal. That's the whole deal behind taking your wheels, and they give you what they call gold wheels, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Sound about right?
Yeah.
That's as I remember.
One trick was kids would take dry ice and massage the rubber with the dry ice to make it bone hard to get them to roll as smooth as possible. Now they call it juicing the wheels, right? Dry ice.
But I just think if you brought the program back for our young kids today and had them to go through the enjoyment that you and I experienced.
Yeah.
Like I say, money can't buy that, but what it does for you in later years is tremendous. And it won't be all that expensive.
May I say something?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry I missed your program. I had a funeral and then I needed to go to the inaugural of the new president of Guilford College, so I apologize. I've got a story about everything. When I got out of law school in '69, my ambition was to be president of the High Point JCs. Very political. Miraculously, I made it. And that year we ran over 360 projects, one of which was the Soapbox Derby. And one reason I wanted to get back was to hear from you guys, but I also wanted to see the lady that I gave she was the first woman that won. I think you said she got sick and could not. But I'd love to see it come back. We used to do it on Kirkwood Drive. Kirkwood runs off Eastchester. We would, there's a hill there, and we would, I guess it's Parish Avenue that crosses. We would do it up at the top of the hill. But I'd like to be able to help you bring it back, because it changes lives from young people digging. Yeah. So enough talk, but I'm sorry I missed. And again, I'd love to see it come back to High Point. It was great. Can't remember. Do you remember what year it started here? 51. 51. And I think it carried on. Do you know how long it carried on here?
72, 73.
I think y'all said 72 earlier.
No, that was the year I was president. It carried on after that. I was state president in 75, 76 of the JCs, and we were still having it, I think. Anyway, let me know if I can help.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I want to thank everybody for this great conversation we've been having here. This has been so much fun to hear. I think we've reached our 3 o'clock, we've reached our hour time frame. Please feel free to stay around and chat. And again, let's thank Bud and Bill for coming out today. And I want to thank all of you for coming out to this program. I've learned a lot. I hope you all have too. And once again, if you're interested in learning more about the Historical Society, I'll be in the back. So feel free to stop by, and please stop by and see the Need for Speed exhibit where the Soapbox Derby car is on display if you haven't had a chance. Thanks so much.
Thank you.